Embark on a grand new adventure across the world of Arkesia as you level up, dive into memorable dungeons, and take part in one of the most expansive endgames available in an MMO today. Hey there friends, it's Kodiak here, welcome to Legacy Gaming. Today we're sharing our ultimate preview for Smilegate's MMOARPG, Lost Ark. Lost Ark. Maybe you've heard of it, maybe you haven't. The game created by Smilegate was originally released in Korea, then sometime later got brought to Russia. Now the game is coming to North America and Europe with the help of Amazon Game Studios. Lost Ark is a high fantasy MMOARPG. You create a custom character, accept quests across a vast and sprawling world, dive into dungeons, and become a hero of legend. It's a timeless formula, one we've seen again and again. Lost Ark taps into the nostalgic nature of some of the original MMOs, taking players from one end of the world to another as they complete quests, battle demonic hordes, and level up. At a foundational level, the game pulls liberally from some of the best original ideas from MMOs, like detailed class identity, story-based questing, instance group content, and so much more. The influences of the past can be seen nearly everywhere in Lost Ark, but at the same time, the game is forging its own path, evolving systems like combat, which are a clear step above everything else in the genre. If there's one word I would use to describe Lost Ark, it would be massive. But to really understand everything the game has to offer, we need to break it all down system by system. No matter what MMO you play, one of the first things you do is create a character, and Lost Ark is no different. The first decision you'll have to make is what class to play. There are 5 main classes: Assassin, Gunner, Mage, Martial Artist, and Warrior. Unfortunately, you are gender locked in this game. It's a holdover feature from the original Korean version, and while I do think this is an outdated system, sadly, there's nothing we can do about it. Once you do choose your class, you have some control over the way your character looks. You can't change any aspects of the body, those are dictated by the class themselves, but facial features, including some more finite control over certain aspects like the eye and the mouth, give you a bit more control than your standard run-of-the-mill MMO. It's hard to ignore the Eastern influences on the character creator, but given that the NA/EU version of Lost Ark is the third iteration of the game built off the Korean original, it makes sense. At the end of the day, it's not the most elaborate character creator on the market, but it's definitely a step above most other options you can play. Picking your base class is just the first piece of the puzzle. On top of that, you'll have to lock in a subclass shortly after loading into the game. There are a lot of choices here, and I want to quickly run through each of the subclasses because I really think this will either sell you or turn you off to the entire experience. For warriors, you have the Berserker, a powerful warrior that uses high damage greatsword attacks and can enter an unstoppable state. The Gunlancer, a frontline warrior that uses his unique weapon to attack groups of enemies while also providing some substantial defense for his team. And the Paladin, a holy warrior that uses a potent combination of magic and sword arts to damage enemies and provide some utility to his allies. For the Martial Artist, we have the Striker, a close quarters combat fighter that uses a combination of fast and deadly moves to close gaps and deal damage with powerful punches and kicks. The War Dancer, a powerful hand-to-hand fighter that imbues her attacks with powerful elemental aspects. The Scrapper, a fighter that blends the warrior spirit with innovative technology to deliver some truly over-the-top offense. And the Soul Fist, a warrior in tune with the world around her that switches between melee and ranged attacks to defeat enemies with a blistering barrage of offense. For the Gunners, we have the Gunslinger, a ranged fighter that uses a pistol, rifle, and shotgun to deliver an unmatched flurry of damage and a hail of lead. The Artillerist, a heavy weapons expert that wields a specialized rocket launcher machine gun hybrid. The Deadeye, a similar subclass to the Gunslinger with slightly more emphasis on close-range combat with his deadly shotgun. And the Sharpshooter, Lost Ark's version of a ranger that uses a mechanical bow with specialized arrows designed to rip enemies to shreds. For the Mages, we have the Bard, a magic-wielding musician that supports her team through a number of powerful AoE spells. And the Sorceress, an elemental-wielding magic user that calls on fire, ice, and lightning spells to decimate her foes and provide substantial DPS to her team. The Summoner was available to play during the beta but has since been pulled, replaced by the Sorceress. The class will be launched at some point in the NA/EU version down the line. Finally, we have the Assassins. The Shadow Hunter unleashes demonic attacks on her enemies with a flash of dark energy and biting steel, and the Deathblade cuts foes to ribbons with 2 razor-sharp swords that she wields with masterful precision and deadly grace. Choosing a class is no easy decision, and because you're locked in once choosing that class, the decision becomes even more challenging. The good news is, Lost Ark is a game that encourages players to create alts. Much of the endgame content has daily caps, which means if you want to push the cutting edge of the endgame, you'll need a small army at your back. The one thing that might throw you for a loop is the fact that Lost Ark doesn't subscribe to the standard tank, DPS, healer trinity. Certain classes like the Bard, Paladin, and Gunlancer lean into those ideas a bit more than the other classes, but when push comes to shove, Lost Ark's endgame content is about personal responsibility and coordination, not necessarily relying on someone to spam heal you an entire boss fight. But we're getting way ahead of ourselves here. We've still got a lot to discuss, and next up on the agenda is the all-important and second to none combat. Fluid, flashy, and satisfying. 3 words I'd use to describe the combat in Lost Ark. No matter what class you choose to play, you'll have a deep set of skills to wield in battle, and nearly all of them manage to make you feel powerful to a fault. Lost Ark's combat is primarily AoE based, which means you need a whole host of AoE abilities to fight through the thousands of mobs that rise up to face you. There are 3 basic types of attacks. Standard attacks, where you press a button and the attack triggers. Channeled attacks, where you hold the abilities button to extend its duration. And timed attacks, where you press the attack button and release it during a specific window for an extra damage bonus. These 3 simple systems may not sound very exciting, but when you consider each player has the ability to slot around 8 abilities, you end up with a repertoire of skills that tap into every aspect of the game's core combat systems. What's so great about Lost Ark's combat is just how unique each class looks and feels. When playing a Paladin, you feel that hybrid playstyle as you wield a powerful sword and tap into holy magic. While playing the Summoner, you feel that spirit of Arkesia run through you and have access to it at your beck and call. This trend continues no matter what class you play, and it's why Lost Ark's combat manages to feel so impactful, because everything from the actual abilities to their effects to those beautiful animations are just top-notch. On top of the combat are tripods, which act as a skill tree system within the game. As you level up, you'll have access to points, which you can allocate into abilities to enhance their potency. At levels 4, 7, and 10, you'll unlock a new tier of benefits that will augment that particular skill. As you might expect, in some cases, these will change things subtly by increasing a passive bonus or improving some aspect of an ability's function. But in other cases, these tripods massively change the nature of an ability, transforming its function and sometimes its form. If you love building out a unique character with specific abilities and custom talents, look no further than Lost Ark. Expect to see a huge array of guides online showcasing all of the different ways players can approach a class, and given the fact that respeccing your tripods is free and there is an extensive testing area where you can try out the builds, there is no shortage of ways for casual and hardcore fans alike to take advantage of the game's incredible combat. With a character created and your subclass locked in, it's time to start the leveling process. Just like in other MMOs, your first and primary objective is to level up your character as you travel across the world of Arkesia, moving from continent to continent, picking up quests, killing enemies, and doing a lot of the standard tasks associated with MMO leveling. One thing the developers absolutely nailed about the leveling process was the simplicity of everything. No matter where you are in the world, no matter what the quest, you'll have an easy enough time finding objectives, collecting quest items, and navigating the world. While quests may not be incredibly interesting, the process is smooth, and that's crucial when you consider how grindy leveling can often be in MMOs. Lost Ark is no different. You'll spend dozens of hours leveling up one character, more if you aren't laser focused on that task, but there's nothing wrong with taking your time during the entire process. Each continent in Arkesia is vivid and varied. One moment you'll be traipsing across a countryside, the next you'll be scouring the desert surrounded by mechanical creations. There are a lot of themes that run through Lost Ark: high fantasy, gothic, steampunk, and much more, but honestly, the constant change of scenery keeps the leveling experience engaging. Throughout your leveling experience, you'll have to complete a number of dungeons. Each region usually ends in a dungeon quest, and let me just say, Lost Ark nails the dungeon experience. Things will start off simple. You'll start by exploring a bandit hideout, kill a few mobs, and things will seem a bit vanilla. But as you level up and gain access to new dungeons, things get more complex, more intricate, and more detailed. Leveling dungeons are not incredibly hard, so let's just clear that up right now. But they do become much more immersive experiences that blend the top-tier combat we talked about earlier with the elaborate storytelling often synonymous with Eastern RPGs. Dungeons are instance-based, which means you matchmake into a challenge specific to your player or group. The best thing about dungeons is that you can tackle them solo or with a group of up to 4 players. As you'd expect, dungeons are much more enjoyable with other people, but if no one is queuing up using the matchmaking system, it's nice to have an option to go through that content yourself so you can keep moving forward. Dungeons also come in 2 different flavors, normal difficulty and hard difficulty. As you'd expect, taking on the harder dungeon will reward you with slightly better gear, but remember, these are leveling dungeons and gear pieces will be changed out quickly during that grind, so don't get too hung up on the difficulty you choose. Lost Ark also features something called scenarios. These are story-driven dungeons designed just for your character. I actually found these to be some of the most enjoyable bits of content during my leveling experience because they often kept me engaged with some great storytelling and interesting combat objectives. One great example of this is called Glorious Wall. It's a Helm's Deep style encounter where you fight on the ramparts of Lutera Castle in an attempt to win back the seat of power for the rightful king. It's a scenario that could have easily been made into a movie, and while not all live up to the exact same level of enjoyment, most are just as interesting. Scenarios also manage to strike a nice balance when it comes to difficulty. Some of the boss fights are no joke, and if you're a slouch when it comes to mechanics, you'll have a tough time getting through them unscathed. Scenarios are peppered in everywhere during your leveling process, and if you're someone that likes to level up with a friend, they'll throw you for a loop, at least at first, but once you get used to them, they become a really enjoyable aspect of the game. If you're someone that usually invests time and energy into lore, then the story of Lost Ark is probably for you. As the name suggests, you're looking for the Lost Ark, a powerful artifact that brings balance to Arkesia. The power of the Ark helped Arkesia prosper, but Petrania, the other realm, suffered and was plunged into chaos under the control of Kazaroth, Lord of Abyss, who created the army of demon legions set to invade Arkesia. In the absence of gods, the Sacrian Order collected the 7 pieces of the Ark, triggered a world war, and awakened the Guardians. The Guardians restored order, punishing the Order, but in the process opened up dimensional rifts that allowed Kazaroth and his demon legion through to Arkesia. Eventually, the Ark is used to close the rift and imprison Kazaroth beneath a volcano. The 7 pieces are scattered across the world and peace is restored. In the years that followed, the world rebuilds, new factions are formed, and the heroes of war establish peace for around 500 years. Lost Ark, the game, begins at a time where that peace is on the brink of collapse. The volcano that imprisoned Kazaroth is about to erupt, and chaos is slowly creeping back into the world. One thing I will say about the story of Lost Ark, it's well told. There are a number of cinematic and story moments that help bring the player along for the ride. This isn't the type of MMO where you'll be reading books just to find out what's going on in the world. The developers are unfolding a story in real time. Keep in mind, since this is an MMO, the full story has yet to be told. Even in the Korean version of the game, new story elements are being added, which means we have years of lore to catch up on here in the West. One thing MMOs are known for is optional content, the ability to travel off the beaten path and do something outside of the main story and the grind for endgame glory. Lost Ark is easily one of the most expansive games when it comes to things to do, and I'm going to try and highlight as many of them as I can here. Although it is technically part of the leveling experience, I wanted to quickly talk about the Tome of Adventure. On each continent, you'll find a new set of tasks in your Tome of Adventure. This includes things like killing certain NPCs, fighting world bosses, and visiting the different Vista viewpoints scattered around the continent. The more things you complete, the more rewards you can get, and considering you can do all of this while you're leveling, it might be worth spending the extra time to complete. Rewards range from resurrection feathers and cards to rapport items and potions, so all valuable stuff. Lost Ark doesn't subscribe to the standard faction reputation system we see in other games. No, here everything is about one-to-one interactions. Certain NPCs around the world will have a heart over their head, and that means it's a rapport NPC. Through a combination of chatting, questing, emotes, and gifts, you'll be able to level up your rapport with that character. Each time you level up with an NPC, you'll gain a different reward, and these come in all shapes and flavors, ranging from gold and silver to Stronghold items. There are dozens of these rapport NPCs scattered throughout the world and provide you with some decent rewards for the time invested. Cards are an interesting feature that were still a bit buggy during the beta. The gist is rather simple. There are different collections of cards that, when put together in a deck, will give you various passive buffs. I do think that the cards will play a big part in the overall endgame experience, especially for those players that like to min-max and push the cutting edge. Although most of the info text wasn't working during the beta, we could see that certain sets of cards would buff important aspects of our character, like elemental resistances. These could be key when it comes to taking on some of the raids and bosses in the endgame. Cards can be obtained a great many number of ways, including questing, rapport, and through island exploration. If you're a fan of collecting things, then look no further than Mokoko Seeds. These are little green seedlings that you can find on each continent. They're often well hidden and hard to spot and are account bound, so once you find them once, you're good to go. Mokoko Seeds can be used to purchase items from Totoma, an NPC in Mokoko Village. Depending on the number of seeds you found, you can purchase things like potions that improve your nature stats, sailors that you can use to enhance different aspects of your ship, or cosmetic items. Mokoko Seeds are completely optional and have no real implication on the endgame content within Lost Ark. Within the game, there are various gathering professions called life skills. There are 6 in total, and each provide you with various resources, some of which you can use for crafting back at your stronghold. The 6 life skills are archaeology, fishing, herbalism, hunting, lumbering, and mining. Life skills provide you with the means to gather basic materials, and as you might suspect, these systems feed into various crafting systems at your stronghold. For example, foraging is one of the most beneficial life skills, as the herbs are most often used to make potions and bombs. These are items you'll need if you want to get into endgame PvE content. It's not required that you use life skills to get the items, but if you don't farm and craft your own items, you'll need to get them another way, most likely by purchasing them from an auction house. Life skills have their own leveling system, and when you hit certain level thresholds, you'll gain new benefits with that skill. Oftentimes, these benefits speed up the entire life skill process, but there is a limit to how much you can farm within the game. Like much of the content within Lost Ark, there is a cap to how much of a particular activity you can do. You'll have roughly 10k life skill energy that you can tap into, and this is shared across all of your characters, so you have to be judicious about what life skill you want to sink time into. No matter the life skill, you'll have to use tools for the job. These will lose durability over time, which you can repair using silver, but they will all lose max durability over some time. You can repair these tools using craftsman tokens, which you can purchase using crystals in the store. Lost Ark features a small base building system called a Stronghold. This acts as your own private island that can be used for a number of different functions. The first function is purely cosmetic. You can receive or craft various items that you can then place around your stronghold for aesthetic purposes. This really has no impact on your gameplay whatsoever, but if you're someone that values the way things look, this is something you can do. That being said, there are a few decorative items that do provide gameplay value. These items will appear blue in your crafting menu and, when slotted in the mansion, will provide you with some small passive bonuses. Common benefits include reducing the energy consumption of research and/or just reducing the cost of that research. Once fully unlocked, you can have 3 beneficial structures slotted and 3 beneficial outfits slotted. One of the most important aspects of your stronghold is the laboratory. Here you can research a number of improvements to your stronghold that will ultimately make the process of crafting easier. Some examples of research include increasing your energy regeneration or decreasing consumption, expanding your expedition warehouse, which is your character's storage, and unlocking various regions around your stronghold. It's an essential structure and one that you'll want to invest in as soon as possible. Just as important is the workshop, and this is where all that gathering with life skills comes in handy. The workshop allows you to craft a great many number of things, including battle items like potions and bombs, food which provides you with various buffs, cosmetic estate items, high-quality tools for gathering, and miscellaneous items like archaeology maps that give you access to a secret instance archaeology event and treasure. The final aspect of Strongholds is the headquarters facility. This allows you to send out a ship and crew to take on small missions autonomously. This is a great way to passively gain resources that you can use for your other endeavors. The more sailors and ships you have unlocked, the more options you have for rewards. You can even send out a crew on a special mission, mirroring some of the endgame activities you can do as a player in the real world. To be clear, this isn't a way to get around the endgame caps of those activities, but if you're busy and you can't log on that day to do any of the daily content, this is a stopgap that allows you to still gain some rewards with minimal effort. I also want to point out that there is a training dummy in the Korean version of the game. This is basically a way to passively level any of your alts. You select them and let them train for a certain period of time, after which they gain a huge chunk of XP. This was not part of the NA EU beta, and I doubt it'll be a feature when the game launches in the West sometime in 2022. You can choose to completely skip Strongholds if you wish, but there is enough value here that spending some time to research and craft will help you on the road to success within the game. If you do choose to ignore this aspect of Lost Ark, you can do that. You'll just end up spending more of your various currencies at the auction house to pick up certain items you'll need. Shifting gears, let's talk about player versus player combat, PvP. Lost Ark features an arena that pits small groups of players against one another in casual or ranked combat. At the time of release, there will be 3 different PvP modes. Free-for-all is exactly that, a free-for-all where you go up against 5 other competitors solo. The person with the most points earned by killing other opponents is the winner after a set period of time. Team Deathmatch pits 2 teams of 3 against each other at the same time. Teams score points by getting kills, and the team with the most points at the end of the round wins. Finally, Team Elimination is a 3v3 contest where teams send out one member to duel another member of the opposing team. Entire teams can be carried by one player that manages to kill the entire enemy team. Lost Ark PvP may seem straightforward, but there is a healthy amount of preparation that you need to do before entering a round. Before jumping into an arena, you need to create a PvP build. This is independent of your PvE build and requires that you allocate 1,250 attribute points and 340 skill points. This system is designed to put players on even footing from the get-go. Once you unlock PvP somewhere in the mid-20s, you'll have the same potential as a player that's in the 50s. Normal PvP matches reward you with some basic PvP currency, but the competitive PvP modes allow you to climb the seasonal ladder and fight for a spot on the leaderboards. Similar to other games, the higher your ranking is, the better your reward is at the end of the season. PvP is an incredibly fun piece of optional content in the game that rewards casual PvPers as well as the more hardcore crowd, giving both groups rewards for their efforts. There is additional PvP in the form of guild versus guild combat, which we'll talk about in this next section. Before we dive into the endgame content, I want to talk about guilds. Being that Lost Ark is an MMOARPG, playing with other people has a huge upside. Being part of a guild not only gives you access to new content, but you gain substantial rewards for being part of an active community that contributes to the overall guild versus guild and guild versus environment content. At the most basic level, guilds are a way to bring players under one banner, as is the case with guilds in most games. At the start of a guild, you'll be able to bring in 50 people, but through research and advancement of the guild, that cap will increase. Each week, the guild leader can set guild quests. These will either lean more into PvP or PvE, depending on the nature of your guild. Players that contribute to those quests will help increase the amount of crystals the guild earns. This is a special currency exclusive to guilds. During the weekly reset, the guild and its members are allocated guild crystals based on a set percentage established by the guild leader. Depending on your contribution, you'll get more or less crystals that you can spend at the guild shop. A fresh guild won't have much in terms of shop items, but as you research and progress your guild, the members will have access to a number of important items, including loot chests and upgrade items. Being a contributing member to your guild means having more crystals to spend on more items, so it's a win-win. Guilds can also take part in guild activities. Island captures are large-scale PvP events where guilds compete to take over control of various items scattered around Arkesia. Island capture events happen at set times each week, determined by the server, and reward guilds with substantial rewards. Boss raids are a form of GvE content where guilds race to see who can kill certain bosses fastest. The higher the boss rank, the more members required to take part in that particular challenge. At the end of the week, the guilds that are ranked will be paid out in guild crystals and experience. Unlike in GVG, you can set your own times to take on GvE content based on your guild member schedules. Being part of a guild is absolutely essential to having a true Lost Ark experience, and while I did include it in the optional section of this video, I recommend everyone consider being part of a community. That being said, Legacy Gaming will have a guild open to everyone on day one. Our goal is to have an open community where players of all skills can come in, contribute to the guild, and experience the game in full. The plan is to have the guild up and running as soon as possible on day one, so if you want to hang out with our crew, all you need to do is join the Legacy Gaming Discord and assign yourself the Lost Ark role. That way you'll be able to link up with our team right at launch. Now it's time to talk about the end game. We all know that MMOs truly start once you reach that end game content, and let me just tell you this, there is a lot available to take advantage of. Keep in mind that every aspect of the end game is capped daily, so you can't just keep running the same thing for multiple hours on end. That being said, there's a lot to talk about, so let's dive in. Once you reach level cap, the first thing you'll want to do is Chaos Dungeons. These can be completed solo or in a small group up to 4, and are basically massive mobbing dungeons. There's no real complexity or story to these, it's just about killing everything and anything filling up a gauge and completing the challenge. The goal here is simple: get the introductory gear necessary to reach some of the more engaging endgame content. Guardian raids are most likely the second bit of content you'll dive into after Chaos Dungeons. These are single boss encounters that must be completed in a group. Players will enter a dungeon and, using a special item called a flare, track down a guardian somewhere in the area. These are definitely a step up in difficulty, and while it doesn't require voice comms or any crazy communication to complete, it does require that players have some level of personal accountability, as these bosses do have a substantial amount of HP. Guardian raids reward you with upgrade items that you can use to increase the item level of your main set, as well as occasional loot chests. The Cube Dungeon is another form of group content, one that relies more heavily on communication and coordination. There is an aspect of luck and randomness that comes with taking on the cube, but with high risk comes high reward. As a group, your goal is to clear a room filled with enemies. Rooms can have a range of enemies, from standard mobs all the way up to bosses. You'll have a set amount of time in each room to kill the enemies before additional mobs spawn that can easily 2 or 3 shot your entire party. When entering each room, you will either receive a buff or a debuff, and these can range from absolutely terrible to absolutely game-changing and everything in between. It's all RNG based. When you do clear a room, you gain experience towards your chest. The more rooms you clear, the more experience is allocated towards that chest, which increases its reward. When you clear a room, you have the option to be done in the cube or keep going for an additional reward. If you die at any point in the cube, you'll lose all your progression towards that chest and walk away with nothing. To access the cube, everyone in your party must have a cube entry ticket. This is a highly coordinated activity and is much harder to complete with a pickup group, because players can just rush to the next room and ultimately wipe the team. If you're looking for some more solo endgame content, check out the Tower of Shadow. Each floor presents players with a different challenge, most of which are kill all the things. For each floor you complete, you gain a specific reward. These include upgrade items, chests, and sometimes legendary gear. The Tower of Shadow is tuned for a particular item level, so trying to tackle it as a fresh 50 will be more challenging than if you were fully geared out. The Tower of Shadow can only be done once per character, so once you complete it, you can move on to something else. Island exploration breaks down into 2 categories. On one hand, you can collect island hearts. Just like Mokoko Seeds, these can be collected and banked by clearing out the various islands found all over the seas of Arkesia. Depending on the number of island hearts you have, you can purchase different items from the Island Hearts vendor. Most items are designed to improve your ship capabilities, but there are additional things like potions that increase your overall stats, mounts, and secret maps which unlock island adventures. There are also a number of rolling marine events that take place daily across the seas of Arkesia. Once you reach level cap, you can check out the calendar in the top left and find out when these events are happening. These are pretty casual in nature, but will reward you with a number of different coins depending on the event that you can turn in for various rewards. Chaos Gates are events that can be tracked using that same in-game calendar. These gates will open periodically throughout the week and will only accept a certain number of players to enter them. Once you enter, you'll have a limited amount of time to locate the boss within the gate and kill them. Once you do that, you'll receive primary upgrade reagents as a reward. These are used to increase the gear score of your weapons and main armor. Una's tasks are daily and weekly missions that you can only complete if you have a certain voucher that gives you access to the challenges. These are relatively easy bits of content that will take you to various parts of Arkesia and will reward you with reagents used to upgrade your items and gear score. Abyss dungeons are the first real challenge when it comes to Lost Ark endgame content. These are story-driven dungeons, much like the dungeons we talked about during the leveling portion of this video, and they must be completed in a group of 4. These are no joke and will challenge players with some of the most difficult content in the game. Much like a traditional dungeon, you'll move from room to room, clearing out lesser minions and eventually finding a boss. Bosses in Abyss dungeons tap into an entirely new arsenal of moves that often involve multiple components. Like I said, there is a much greater challenge to be found within Abyss dungeons, but as expected, the rewards are much greater as well. When you clear Abyss dungeons, you'll gain a number of items which can include legendary card packs, epic loot chests, and upgrade materials. All those Chaos Dungeons and Guardian raids have led you to this point, and by completing Abyss Dungeons, you can push your character even further, getting them ready for the ultimate PvE challenge, Raids. Raids are large-scale group content that expands the traditional Lost Ark 4-man group. These challenges are absolutely brutal and will put teams of up to 16 players to the test. While these won't be available at launch in the NAEU, they represent the most challenging bit of content in Lost Ark. If you're a fan of endgame raiding and other MMOs like World of Warcraft, this is exactly the sort of content you'll be interested in doing. Keep in mind that while the holy trinity of tank, DPS, and healer isn't really a thing in Lost Ark, having classes like paladins and bards in your group will be essential, as they still provide some utility to a group. At the time of making this video, the Korean version of the game is currently taking on the T3 content available. The NAEU version of the game will launch at Tier 1 with some modifications, and we'll get to experience raids at some point after launch as new content is rolled out. Lost Ark will be free to play at launch, and while that may be a red flag for many players that have experienced predatory systems within other free-to-play titles, as far as we can tell, those aspects of the game have been severely cut back for the NA EU launch. There is a detailed blog post on the Lost Ark website I recommend everyone go check out before deciding whether or not to play the game, because it gives you a clear idea of how both teams are trying to adjust the game for a Western audience. That being said, there are a few things you should know about and ultimately make a decision if these are deal breakers for you. Lost Ark will feature a store. We had a great chance to dive into this during the beta, and I'm happy to report that nearly everything in here was cosmetic. When the game releases, the only currency that will require real money to purchase are royal crystals. These will allow you to purchase additional pets, mounts, and other things like name change tickets and character customization tickets. The full extent of the store is unclear. During the Western beta, we only had a handful of items available to purchase, and I have no doubt that more things will flood the shop once the game launches for real. There's also a section of the store that offers discounted items. The shop will often feature items needed for endgame upgrades and will cost crystals. Crystals is a premium currency that straddles the line between paid and free. You can use royal crystals to purchase crystals, but you can also gain them by just playing the game. We don't have a full understanding of how fast players will be able to gain crystals once the game goes live, but it's something we'll be keeping a very close eye on to determine how pay-to-win Lost Ark really is. Lost Ark also features a premium service called the Crystalline Aura. This is equivalent to your monthly subscription fee for a game like WoW and provides you with a number of convenient benefits like free triport transportation, that's the fast travel system within the game, reduction on crafting timers at your Stronghold, and a number of other benefits. There is no doubt this is a pay-for-convenience feature, but while nice, it's not necessary. During the beta, the Crystalline Aura cost 420 crystals. Pets are another aspect of the game I want to quickly touch on. In the Western release of Lost Ark, you will get a pet for free. The pet comes standard with auto loot, but you can spend crystals to activate various perks. These include small passive stat boosts randomized on each pet, as well as a second-tier activation that gives you access to more convenience features like a mobile mailbox and a repair feature out in the field. I'm not sure if this is still the case, but in the Korean version of the game, you had to rent pets. They weren't permanent fixtures, but that won't be the case in the Western release. There are a few other aspects of the business model we didn't get a chance to see during our limited time with the beta. One aspect is a level skip. At a certain point, we were allowed to rapidly increase the level of one character, basically catching up to the beginning of the endgame. This was provided to all players during the beta, but it's unclear if that feature will be something players can access within the store. My guess is that once players have at least one leveled up character, they'll be able to buy a skip pass for future characters. This has become a common system in a lot of MMOs, especially as the level gap from start to finish has expanded with the addition of more content updates, but it's still worth pointing out. Finally, I want to touch on the various founder packs available for purchase ahead of launch. There is no doubt these are going to have an impact on player experience with the game. I want to focus on the $99 pack since this has the most benefits, and I'll try and highlight everything that I think could be considered pay for convenience. The Head Start, 3 days of early access to the game, 7,000 royal crystals, which as we pointed out, might have some implication for alt skips and other features, a 30-day Crystalline Aura, a Platinum Supply Crate which will feature a massive amount of consumable health potions, resurrection feathers, gathering tools, and more, a character expansion slot which will allow you to create an additional alt, and the Platinum Welcome Crate which will contain a Rapport chest and a card pack. Simply put, money can buy you convenience, but as with most games, if you have self-control, there's no reason to have to commit to any of these purchases. If you consider the fact that endgame PvE and endgame PvP primarily rely on skill, it's pretty obvious that spending the money to purchase some convenience items isn't necessary. It's really up to you to make your own determination if you think the game is pay to win, but if you're interested in my opinion, I'd say this. There are paid elements of Lost Ark that will make your time leveling and grinding easier, but if this is the game you plan to spend a lot of time in, you can accomplish nearly everything you want just by playing the game. Because these paid features barely touch the endgame PvP or PvE experience, a player with good self-control will be able to enjoy the game entirely without thinking twice about ever spending a single dollar. The amount of information I just threw at you guys is insane. This is easily the most extensive video we've ever put together here on the channel for any game we've covered, but there is one thing I didn't get to talk about. Is Lost Ark fun? I don't want to dive into an entirely new subject, but I did want to let you know that we have a number of other videos already posted on the channel that break down our opinions on the game. As seasoned MMO players that have been in the genre for decades, we know that information is great, but sometimes opinions are just as valuable. So give those videos a watch for some more of our thoughts. If you are still hanging out for the ride, congratulations. I know that was a lot to take in, but as you can see, Lost Ark is a game bursting at the seams with content. The game is set to launch in North America and Europe sometime in early 2022 and will present players with an entirely first tier of content within the game. Remember, Lost Ark has already been established in Korea and Russia for multiple years, which means the NAEU version of the game will have a steady stream of content for years to come. If you're here for the long haul and are excited about Lost Ark, again, Legacy Gaming will be operating an open guild within the game. Anyone is welcome to join on their main character, no matter the skill level. During the beta, we maxed out our team, so be sure to join our Discord and get yourself locked in with our Lost Ark community as soon as possible to secure your spot on the team. Of course, if you guys did enjoy this video, we need your help. Hit that thumbs up and consider subscribing. Putting together these long format info-driven guides is incredibly time consuming, and we would love your support. Finally, if you like anything we're doing here at the channel and you want to support us even more, you can do so by becoming a member. For just a couple bucks, you're helping evolve this channel to take our community to that next level. Check out the join button below to learn more. My name is Kodiak, and from everyone here at Legacy Gaming, thanks for watching, and play on.